my initial thought for this scene was they're leaving a party and the boy's on a high, and at the end, through the context of the scene, he's actually not going, like by the end of it, he's not excited anymore because he's realizing that the dragon's sort of poking holes in everything that just happened. So my initial thought was like, oh, I should start the scene where they're kind of going up, like excited, and of course you going towards, even though like they're coming from a mansion which is glitz and glamour, like they're heading up, towards the skyline, the lights and everything, and then by the end of the scene they're going down. So that was like my first bookend of the shot of the sequence, was like a very clear in and out that's like representing the boy's trajectory internally through, like, how do I do that visually? So at the beginning they're going up, he's super excited, and then if you remember the last two shots, now they descend now down. So the boy's on a downward slope internally, emotionally, and of course the last shot going away from the lights and the glamour, and the shot before, you would see sort of the more slums. So they're heading back towards that. So that was like my first thought. So even before I got into the context of the scene, I had an in and an out where I was like, that's what I want to do. And one of the things I thought would be fun is, like, since he flies in sort of a serpentine, I wanted to do this thing where those two characters are at odds right now. So instead of just doing a shot where you see both characters at the same time, like we could have easily staged this where you see Long and the boy, the dragon and the boy. But I thought what would be funny is this sort of seesaw effect where it's like, boy's happy, 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 happy. Dragon comes in, grumpy, grumpy, grumpy. Boy comes back in, happy. So it's kind of this like uneven, like they're still going, they're together, but you can tell I'm trying to physically represent that they're not on the same page. They're not like together. They're not clicking right now. Then when we stop, I just put a little motion blur to just like kind of create this sort of effect of like poof, screeching to a halt. And I could have done this shot where the boy just looks up and we cut, but I thought would be interesting is to introduce the dragon into this shot, kind of going over him, and we cut on that action. So if you see that, you can feel it. So see how that motion sort of continues over those two shots there. So it just helps make that shot feel a little more organic, right? It just feels comfortable for the eye. The motion sort of in the same, if you like kind of put your finger on the screen, you'll see like where the motion is occurring. By the time we cut, see, it's kind of like you're kind of picking up right in a similar spot. So the eye doesn't have to do a lot of business, doesn't have to do a lot of work to kind of figure out where we're looking next. So cutting on action there. And then this is a thing, this was like this concept, like a philosophy that we kind of came up with for Long as we were boarding. And it's something we discovered in Board, which is like the more frustrated and the more annoyed he gets as a character, the more complex his shapes become. So I wanted to illustrate that here, where you guys might not know it at the time, but he's actually kind of lying and kind of spinning a little bit of a tale. He's not being honest about his past. And so what I thought was fun was like, when you're lying, there's that expression, you're like tying yourself in knots, or you're like, you're circling around yourself or whatever it is. So I thought like it was fun to try to create this shape where it's like really complicated, and you're as an audience, you're probably wondering if this is true or not. And then this is sort of a physical manifestation of like, he's trying really hard to like make this true or whatnot. And then what I decided to do was use that shape for the cut. So like, again, I created this like little loop in the dragon's body. We create an axis through there, and then I basically just go around to the other side and like, use what you have. So I used this to like silhouette the boy. So like, this is one of those things, remember we talked about, like, don't give the audience a choice about where they're looking, right? Make them look. There is no doubt about where you're supposed to be looking when you cut here. Like, you have no choice but to look at the boy. I blocked everything else out. I made it blurry. He's right in the middle. Like, there's no confusion about what is important here. So their whole arc, he's always just basically like, kid, just wish for gold and get this over with. Just wish for money, get this over with. Just, so that's what this moment is meant to represent. So again, one of the things I did here, so I covered up the screen, and I wanted you to see the boy's reaction first. Then I introduced the dragon again. So I felt like that was important. I didn't want it, the boy is also absorbing this. So I felt like I didn't want both of those things going at the same time and have your eye, splitting your eye between what you're looking at. I thought, you know what? The dragon's up above him. So he makes the last gold, fill the screen, cut. Let's see the boy first, then sort of going into this, bring the dragon in, and even as the boy turns. So again, now we're done with the boy. We're seeing what he's absorbed, how he's feeling, turns, leads us back to the dragon. So the dragon can continue his sort of onslaught here. So this is an example, like we had talked about, of like unlocking Z space, right? Like you could definitely do this gag with cutting, but I was like, I don't want to. So I even restaged it. Like I even restaged it internally in the shot. So I staged it for just kind of like a conversation. Then I had the dragon's tail come up, pull the boy. And if you notice what I'm doing, it's fun. It's like fun action and fun business. But what I'm actually doing is restaging for a gag I wanted to do. So I pulled him completely out of, to the side of the frame, from here all the way to here to give me room to do this. And even as I do that, I adjust up with the character, again, to create more space, give more real estate for that gag. Again, just using the Z space of the shot, using the characters to come up with a really funny gag. And I think this was at the time one of my favorite moments of the short, because especially this part, to welcome the great emperor home with a great parade. This cut to me is just like, the cut alone is funny, because this is the point of the sequence. They're on completely opposite ends of this sort of philosophical spectrum. So I felt like this gag is not only funny and using the character, but also physically representative of the emotional and the internal sort of schism between these two characters. And then you add on whoa, they have parades in heaven? And he pulls the boy closer. You can get away with a lot of emotion without having to redraw everything. So if you notice, the only thing that shifts during these panels is mostly just the eyes and eyebrows, right? Just the eyes and the eyebrows. There's a little bit of a mouth tweak there, but you get a lot. Then one tilt, that's it. I'm not tilting all the time, just one tilt, which is like down, and then more pupil and eyebrows and a little shrug there, but not a lot, right? It's very subtle. And what I have found is if you redraw everything every time, the more you redraw, the more that is moving on screen. So if you want just to focus on acting, like just move eyebrows and eyes and really subtle. And so many people, like after I pitch, will be like, man, that moment was so emotional. And I'm like, it's literally just lines moving. Like, that's it. Like just lines moving like 10 degrees or like slanting. Like, that's it. But it's because I'm focusing on that, because it's the only thing that's moving. That's what people feel when you're in storyboards, when you're tapping through these. This is something that's pretty cool. Everybody take your finger and put it on the boy's face right now on the screen. Watch what happens as I tap through all of these panels. Look at that. Do you see it? Does it make sense? You don't necessarily notice that when I'm pitching it. And it doesn't feel boring, right? Your eye hasn't even moved across these whole shots, but it doesn't feel boring, does it? That's eye tracking. I am manipulating where you're looking, putting all the action. So like even here on this one, you jump for a split second, but then you're back, and it's still sort of in this general space that I've created, right? So how's that? So if you're still, keep holding your finger there. Let's see how long this goes. Still works there, still works there, still works there, still works there, still works there. So here the dragon turns a little bit, and that pulls us away a hair. But remember, this is the one I said I didn't like as much. This was that one shot. I was like, maybe it's unmotivated. Maybe I would do something else. So that's the one moment where I'm like, damn it, my eye moves. But again, still. So now, if you look what I did here, this is what I talked about on that jump of that cut, right? Watch what happens. So all of those cuts, pretty much in the same spot, fingers in the same spot. Introduce new information. Our eyes go there. So right, like that, our eyes go to the dragon. So now on the cut, it's a new focal point, right? Like now I'm actually putting the focal point where I made you look, rather than keeping it in the same spot. I made you look somewhere. Now we're over there. So, Bing, your eye goes over to the dragon. The dragon says something also, which is for sure going to draw our eye there. Now we cut. And when we cut, hey, look, we're looking at what we're supposed to be, which is the dragon. Then the boy comes in. Now our eye goes back to the middle, right? Sort of back to the sort of space between the two characters, bouncing back and forth, back to the boy. Now if you go back to the center here, right, as he falls, cutting on action, we're kind of more or less in the same place. We lose it a little bit here, but I still think it's TV safe, right? It's sort of like still in this area. It's not going from like here to here or anything. We're still sort of tracking that. So